Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this Biggerplate webinar, where we are going to be talking about mind mapping with MindMeister. MindMeister is the mind mapping tool that you can see on the screen right now. And I'm going to use this mind map that you can see in front of you to just work through this webinar today, which we've got scheduled for 60 minutes, but sometimes it can be a little bit shorter than that. So let's see how we get on today. Let's just hide couple of things here. And hopefully off we go. Okay, so let's jump straight into our presentation mind map then. So by means of a welcome, my name is Liam Hughes. I'm the founder of Biggerplate.com. If you want to follow up with me, ask any questions or comments or feedback about this session, about MindMeister, about mind mapping, or about Biggerplate, please do feel free to email me there on the address you can see on the screen there, liam@biggerplate.com. And for those of you who are on LinkedIn, you can also feel free to reach out to me there and connect up there, where I'm also very, very active. So for those of you who are not familiar with who or what Biggerplate is, a quick introduction to us for a second. Our focus, our mission, our purpose really is to help people go further with mind mapping. Primarily, we do that through the provision of numerous resources around mind mapping on biggerplate.com. What most people know us for is our library of templates and examples. These are mind maps that have been created and shared using lots of different mind mapping software products, shared on Biggerplate for other people to view, to download, which is a great way to get inspired and get ideas for how you could use mind mapping. But also it can sometimes be a very good way to save time. If somebody else has built a really good template for what you need, then really it saves you time by downloading the template and editing that rather than starting from scratch. We also have plenty of e-learning courses, including MindMeister courses on biggerplate.com, as well as regular events like these and our Biggerplate Connect events, lots of videos, and we also provide training and consultancy services to organizations who are looking to introduce mind mapping tools and techniques. So we are 100% focused on mind mapping, but a very important thing to be aware of is we are software neutral. What that means is we are independent. We're not owned by any mind mapping software companies. We don't make any mind mapping software, and we don't sell any mind mapping software. What that means is we're able to give you hopefully a nice neutral, independent view of the benefits and the possibilities of mind mapping software, but you don't have to worry that we're going to be trying to sell you software as part of that process. So for those of you who are interested to join Biggerplate, Biggerplate is free to join and you can access the mind map library. But if you wanted to go that step further and take your mind mapping up another level, you could upgrade to our pro membership, which gives you access to all of the different resource types on biggerplate.com. And you'll see there's a quick discount code for you to use there. If you use that before the 16th of November, you'll save 25% on the price of Biggerplate Pro. So as it says on the screen there, good opportunity to just grab a quick screenshot so you don't forget that special offer. So what about this webinar today? These are free public webinars to try and give people some introductory information. So what we're going to be covering in this session is a little bit about MindMeister. We're going to look primarily at some of the kind of core, the most important features, in my view, of the software and what's going to give you the most benefit. And I'm going to just touch into a few use cases for working, for studying, and for home, although there are many, many, many more use cases for the software, as you can see if you look on biggerplate.com or the MindMeister website. What we're not going to be covering today, just to set expectations, I'm not going to be talking about the sales or pricing for MindMeister. Remember what I said earlier, we don't sell the software, so we're not going to be able to answer any questions about pricing or discounts or enterprise sales or anything like that. Also, we're not, unfortunately, going to be answering any of your questions if they are real tech support questions. That, again, you need to direct to the MindMeister company, and they'll be very happy to help you. So we don't make the software. So if you're having problems with your account or problems with the software, those are unfortunately not things for me to try and help you with today. So I'm then also just going to pause at the end of the session for any questions or comments. It's always a little bit tricky for me to know whether there are sort of people listening and active online today or not. So it's always really nice to know if you've got a moment to leave in the chat, where are you joining from today? And if you have any questions as I'm presenting today, or comments, or want to share some of your own experiences of using MindMeister, then please feel free to drop those into the comment section here in the Hopin dashboard. So let's press on with our introduction to MindMeister then. So we like to just give people sort of three kind of top three really for why we love a particular product. In this case, why we love MindMeister is really the combination of these three things. It's real-time collaborative mind mapping. And even if you don't feel like you necessarily need to be collaborating in real time, you might find that once you've got access to that functionality, you start to find it useful in perhaps unexpected ways. So real-time collaboration means that anybody can access, anybody who you want to have access, obviously, can access the mind map via the MindMeister website. You can work online with others in the same mind map at the same time. Now, in reality, in our business in Biggerplate, we use MindMeister maps for lots of things. And actually, what we're quite often doing is not working at the same time, but we are working in the same mind map. Maybe I'll log in to do a little bit of work in one section of the mind map, and then one of my team might log in to work on a separate section of the mind map. So the great thing with MindMeister is you're not going to run into these issues of over typing on each other, and everybody can see the same picture in the same mind map. And if you want to work at the same time, MindMeister is probably one of the best mind mapping tools out there for that. And it's really come into its own, obviously, over the last couple of years with the COVID-induced move to remote working, and MindMeister really has kind of come into its own in that regard. And MindMeister has been online collaborative mind mapping since the beginning, so since I think around 2008. So they're not new to this area, and as a result, they've got a very robust, very stable, very well established platform for collaborative remote working on mind maps. So also with MindMeister, as you hopefully will see today, it's very simple and easy. It's easy to start mind mapping. It's easy to share mind maps. And the interface in MindMeister is very simple and easy to understand. You're seeing MindMeister now on my screen as it will look for you if you set up an account with the product. So you'll see really most of my menu options are just down here on the right-hand side. And we'll get into those in just a moment. But aside from this kind of menu over here, a little bit up here, if I wanted to invite other people into the mind map, you'll see that the sort of menus are very, very minimal. And it's not because it's lacking features, it's because it's just been designed really beautifully to try and leave you with as much space to work as possible and not have menus and numerous items cluttering up the interface as you're working. So a lot of people find MindMeister a really nice, simple tool to use because they're not getting confused or overwhelmed with options and menus and navigation issues. Then finally, connected with that top idea of real-time collaboration, one of MindMeister's great strengths is it works across all devices. So as long as you've got an internet browser, you could get into your MindMeister account and do your mind mapping. This also means you're not constricted by whether you're a Windows or a Mac user. And there are also native applications for iOS and for Android. And all of these will sync up together and keep the map up to date wherever you access. And again, even if there's other people accessing in different ways from different places. So it's really a very strong sort of cross-platform mapping tool. So let's talk about some of these key features then of MindMeister. What's going to get you started when you first log into your new shiny MindMeister account? So the first thing we're obviously going to want to be doing is some basic map building. So if you wanted to start a new mind map and start to add some topics, you can do that just using your keyboard very simply. You'll see in the map here, I've got these little plus symbols here. That means I can add a topic outwards, a new topic here, for example, or there's that little plus here that says downwards, so you can see downwards. Now, in reality, I tend to find using the mouse to do that is actually a little bit slow. And what most people seem to do, including myself, is just use their keyboard, and they're just using keys like the insert and tab key, which is going to take you outwards. So if I hit the insert key, I go sort of outwards. And if I hit the return or enter key on my keyboard, I go down. So that sort of insert or tab key and then enter, that's going to get you a long way to just building that basic map structure, albeit hopefully with real words, not just my nonsense there. So you start to build out the basic branch tree structure of a mind map, but often, and part of the real power of mind mapping software is seeing that maybe where you put something to begin with isn't actually the best place for it. And that's where the ability to move and reorder information in your mind map is going to become really important. So to move or sort of change where topics are in the MindMeister map, we could just select it, hold our mouse and just drag that around the map. And you'll see that MindMeister sort of gives us this little shadow that shows where that's going to land when I release the mouse. So if I drop that there, you'll see it's just reordered. Now we can move single topics, or we can drag across and actually move multiple topics at once. We can also move entire branches. So we can really move our information around and get that information in whatever structure we think is going to help us make most sense of that information and those ideas. Similarly, if we wanted to delete, very simple to do. So moving and reordering is how we start to organize the ideas and the information as we've dropped them into our MindMeister map, just using our insert and tab and return keys. Then once our map starts to build up, a really good piece of a really good discipline to get into is to just use the showing and hiding functions to just make sure you don't have too much on display if you're not working in that area of the mind map. So for example, I would always advise you to just use these little markers here to just close down whatever you're not working on right now. So you'll see if I zoom out in the mind map, all of these other main branches are reduced down, so we're not seeing what's beneath this top level. And that just helps us to keep our focus in the right areas when we want to, and avoid us getting distracted or pulled away by other pieces of ideas or information that we've put in earlier. As your map starts to grow, you're going to want to be able to navigate nice and easily. So perhaps the sort of simplest way to move around a MindMeister map, in my opinion, is just grabbing it. So just with your left mouse button, you can just click into the white space of the screen and just sort of pull that canvas around, if you like. Now, I tend to find that's just a much more precise way of moving around. Obviously, I can use my mouse wheel to go up, and if I hold the shift key and use my mouse, I can go in and out and zoom, but I found the map grab is the easiest way to sort of move side to side and around the map. In terms of zooming, you've got options down here to zoom in and options down here to zoom out. You can also use the control. Actually, that's not true because it'll zoom your browser rather than the MindMeister software. Sorry. I use my mouse wheel and the control key here, and that just zooms me in and out. You might just need to experiment a little bit with your keyboard to see which zooming will work with MindMeister versus what will zoom in your entire browser, which is a bit less helpful. So we started then to build a very straightforward tree structure, that branch structure in MindMeister. So we have topics that sit on branches, and that branches really make up what we think of as a mind map. So once you've started to build up your mind map, you might want to start introducing some of these more visual components. So people talk about mind mapping as a visual technique. Well, I actually think mind mapping is really more of a spatial technique. The power of it is really seeing where each of these topics lies in relation to the other topics. The fact is visual sort of to me just suggests we have to use our eyeballs. But what I think people mean when they talk about visual tools is something that can be made to look a little bit more personal, a little bit more interesting than just big blocks of text. And that's where you see we've got some great formatting options in MindMeister to format either individual topics or entire branches. So that's when we might want to start popping open this menu at the side here. Rather than that top one, what we actually want to do is just get this one here that says style. And you'll see here we've got really simple to understand menu options, but lots of options in here to change the text style, font, color, all the things we might like. And then we can also change the actual shape of the topic itself. We can decide what color border it's going to have and really do quite a lot with that single topic. If we want to change sort of the lines for an entire branch, we just need to go sort of further up the branch structure. And again, for example, let's just choose to make all these lines red. And you see that's now fed down the branch structure to all of those subtopics beneath. So formatting the topics or branches, very simple in MindMeister, and gives you a really nice ability to personalize, customize those mind maps to whatever your needs might be, whether that's you just prefer things to be certain colors, or perhaps you're working in an organization where your mind maps will need to perhaps adhere to some brand guidelines or some sort of branding styles, if you like. We can also add images into our MindMeister map. So we've got two options to use here. One is the inbuilt MindMeister library of images, and the other is to upload images from your own computer. So for the MindMeister library, once again, we pop over here to this right-hand menu and just pop open that little emoji there. And what we've got in here is a really large library of images. And you'll see here I can flick between an icon library and emojis. Again, if you're going to use emojis, just be mindful of your audience. Not everyone's going to appreciate the smiley face emoji as much as they might appreciate something that's perhaps a little bit more professional looking. But the icons is where I tend to use most of the kind of imagery. I don't tend to use too many emojis really in my mind map. So the library in MindMeister gives you lots of options to add things that are potentially relevant. So we can add perhaps images that illustrate perhaps our progress on a particular topic. So we might say that we are not started on a task, or maybe 50% complete on a task, or we might have something that's just a little bit more sort of to mark out a priority. So we might mark with a priority 1 or 2 or 3. You'll see up here we've got the options. If we want to maybe make those colors contrast a bit, we can change that to make something a little bit different. But the important thing is we can just add these images in, click away from that, and we've got little visual signals in our mind map. Now, importantly, if we want to maybe make that image bigger, we maybe want to make it a bit more of a focal point, we can just drag on that little corner. And we can also, if we want to, actually relocate the image within the topic by, he says, sorry, here we go. This menu here, position there, and say, for example, we want that above the text or right of the text or even below the text, whatever makes your mind maps look the way you need them to. So adding images from the MindMeister library is one option, and adding images from your own library, your files on your computer, is another option. This is particularly useful perhaps if you're creating a mind map for a business presentation and you need to include a graphic or a graph or a diagram that represents what you're talking about, or if you're maybe doing a mind map for studying, like I'll show you in a moment, you might want images of the particular characters that you're talking about or something like that. So to add images from our own computer, again, we can just pop open this menu here, but we're going to go up to this top one here for actions. And I'm going to say I want to add some media. And if we go just to my desktop, I've got a little image there that you can just drop in. And once again, if I close that menu down, we've got options here to just resize it so it's a bit less offensive. Oh, and you'll see there's the menu I was looking for earlier, presenting it for me a little bit easier this time, so I don't have to go hunting, where I can relocate it, I can just resize it. I can also remove it if I want to. But the important thing is we can just drop local images from our computer into our mind maps to, again, add that visual interest if we so choose. One final sort of visual item that's quite handy in the mind maps is to add a relationship or a connection between items in the mind map that maybe aren't located on the same sort of branch structure, if you see what I mean. So maybe there's two items in the mind map, maybe something up here and something here that we want to show that there's a connection between these, but obviously they're located in different parts of the tree structure. So again, if we come to this actions menu, we can say, let's add a connection here. We can choose where on the topic we want that connection to run off from. So let's choose the end here, and then let's just click it over to here. And there we go. So all we're doing here is just giving ourselves another little visual signal to say these things are connected, even though they maybe are not located in the same area of the mind map. We can, of course, because it's MindMeister, we can add some customization. We can make the line more or less dominant, and we can even add labels to that line to explain why they're connected in some form if we so choose. So I'm just going to delete that off here so it doesn't confuse us. So relationships are another nice way to just show some visual connections between your ideas and your information. Just be wary of adding too many of these into the mind map, otherwise it might start to get a little bit cluttered and actually start to work against you. But if there's very important items to show a connection in two different areas of the mind map, it's a nice, useful feature to use. Finally, another sort of core area for MindMeister functionality is in adding extra information to your mind maps. Now, we will always advise people to try and keep their mind maps just focused on keywords. So you'll notice throughout my presentation today, most of the topics in my mind map are just 1 or 2 or maybe 3 words. So we're trying to avoid big blocks of text and long sentences when we use mind maps. And that's what helps us to make the information and the ideas a little bit easier to manage. We don't get so overwhelmed by the number of words, and we've really focused on distilling down to the essence. But sometimes you need to add extra depth and detail into these documents in order to make them achieve what you need to. And that's where I'd advise using things like hyperlinks, notes, and attachments in MindMeister, which means you can keep the surface level of your mind map nice and clean with just 1 or 2 or 3 keywords, but add a lot of depth and detail just beneath the surface. So hyperlinks will enable you to, for example, link to a website. So if we're maybe doing some research and we find a web page that we think is useful, we can pop open this actions area. Now it says attachment, but actually it's a type of attachment, I guess, is a link. So we can, for example, say, let's put a link here to www.biggerplate.com and then add that in. And what it's going to do is essentially save like a little bookmark here in the topic. And if I click that, it's just going to pop open and take me straight to that destination website. So this is really great. Instead of having like bookmarks in your browser that you forget why you've bookmarked them or what they were for, when you save bookmarks in a links to a website in a mind map like this, you've always got sort of explanation because of where it's located in the mind map. Think about that spatial point I was putting in earlier. You kind of understand why you've got a link to that website because of where it is in the mind map tree structure. So bringing those links to very specific web pages into MindMeister is a very helpful function. Further to that, if we wanted to add more kind of text information, we can use the notes feature. So notes enable us to add detail and depth to any topic, as many topics in the mind map as we like. And we can access that again from just over here and click this notes function, click into here, and we can add lots of extra detail without creating clutter. Now I use this a lot to perhaps copy chunks of text from emails I receive, or maybe I copy and paste sections from emails or documents or sites that I want to just really important information readily available. So if I close down that note, you'll see the surface of my mind map is still just 1 or 2 words, but I've got this little symbol here. Not sure how I did that. That was clever. A little symbol here in MindMeister that tells me I've got a note on that topic. So if I click that, it's going to open that up and I can see that extra information. So it's a great way of putting depth and detail behind every topic in your mind map without overwhelming yourself. It's accessible when you need it, and it's not getting in the way when you don't. Finally, attachments, sort of working on the same principle as both of these things, but sometimes you want to have other essential documents right at your fingertips rather than having to hunt around in the folders and file structures of your computer. So, for example, we can add a file into this mind map using that same actions menu up here and use the attachments. But this time, instead of pasting a link, we would actually say to upload, and we'll find a document. There you go. There's an airplane ticket I've just bought there. So let's attach that PDF. It's going to upload that into the mind map. And that document is now attached to this mind map, like you attach a document to an email. If I wanted to see that file, I'm just now going to click that. It's going to pop open that PDF, and I've got my information right at my fingertips. So again, just like pulling hyperlinks into your mind map, if you can pull all of the essential files into the mind map while you're working, it means you're just going to be able to stay in the same mind map space working rather than keep getting distracted, jumping off to other places. So that's a quick look at what we believe to be sort of the core key features of MindMeister. There are obviously lots more features that you can dive into in your own time, but it's really that set of features that most people are going to get the value out of in MindMeister. Over running Biggerplate since 2008, it's this combination of features that most people are using when they're using mind mapping software, whether it's MindMeister or other tools. So if you can get familiar with just these functions that I've shown you here today, you're going to get huge value out of MindMeister in terms of organizing and managing your ideas and your information. So before I jump into just looking at a few quick examples for MindMeister at work, in your studies, or at home, I'm just going to do a quick check to see if there's any questions. I can see hello from Andy, Chicago, Arnaldo in Brazil. Great to see you both. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions about anything I've shown you today, I can just say Mikola there as well from Odessa, Ukraine. Hello to Mikola, sending you all the best to you and all of your friends and family in Ukraine. And thank you very much for joining us today. So if anybody has any questions about what I've shown you today so far, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to jump back into my presentation and carry on. So let's look at just a few examples. As I said, I can't really cover everything because there's a lot of potential, but let's look at just a few examples of how MindMeister might be used in a working context. Well, lots of people associate mind mapping with brainstorming. Sometimes they get a bit confused between the two. They think mind mapping is brainstorming or brainstorming is mind mapping. It's sort of kind of right, but not entirely right. You need to think of mind mapping and mind mapping tools like MindMeister as really a great tool to support a good brainstorming process. It's not going to do the work for you, but it's going to help you to organize those ideas and the information that comes up in a brainstorming process. So as just one of many examples of a sort of brainstorming template that you might use in MindMeister, you'll see I've just saved a little link here. This is just a link to another MindMeister map that should open up here for me. Just check you're going to see that new map. There we go. Yep. So this is a sort of well-established framework called the Scamper template, really, or Scamper framework, that just encourages you to think in any problem or opportunity, what happens if you were to substitute, what happens if you combine, adapt, modify. This is the most tenuous attempt to create an acronym of put to other uses, eliminate and reverse. So the idea here is that you would look at any particular problem or opportunity in your business perhaps and think, what would happen if we substituted what we do today or changed a component? What could we combine this with, whether it's other products? So again, if I was thinking about the world of Biggerplate and I said, well, what could we do to improve pro membership, for example? We could combine it with our other products. What else have we got? We've got certification, we've got training, we've got coaching. So could we combine it with certification? Yes, maybe we could come up with the idea of maybe you buy pro, get certification free or something like that. So all we're doing here in the MindMeister map is just dropping in our ideas and sort of seeing what else comes to mind. And the mind map structure is really just going to prompt you. And a good question to ask yourself is, can I go any further? So with any topic, you just want to see, can you build out any further your ideas and your information? So Scamper is just one of many brainstorming templates that we might use to kind of think creatively about a particular problem. We might also use MindMeister for slightly more tactical organizational projects and planning. Project management is one of the most popular topics for mind mapping on biggerplate.com. So mind mapping tools like MindMeister are really fantastic for project management. And really, they're better than most of the heavyweight project management tools because most of us don't need heavyweight project management tools. What we need is something that just helps us to get our sense of the details of a project and the big picture. And that's where mind mapping is just fantastic. So just an example, another template, if you like, for maybe a project plan here we're going to open up. Just going to try and close these tabs so I don't put too much strain on here. So this is a project planning MindMeister template, and you'll see it's just got certain headings to try and encourage us to think about what are the objectives for our project. Maybe up here we've got some sort of objectives and key results, and this is where we could use things like those icons to mark up perhaps how far progressed we are towards a particular objective or key result. So maybe we're targeting 100,000 views for something, but we actually could say, well, we've achieved, using the MindMeister icons here, we could say we've achieved maybe halfway there, so we can mark it up with that. You'll see we've also got little icons all over the place illustrating things, and we might have key documents captured in here. We've got perhaps a project plan, who's involved, contact details. So we can really pull lots of information into our mind map here. We've got a slight issue with this overlap here. So let's just come into MindMeister and just see if we can't edit that. Where's our structure gone? How strange. Okay, I'm not going to lose too much time on that. We should be able to say to it to auto align, and I'm not quite sure where that's gone. But this overlapping of topics here, that is probably more about how I've imported this map rather than how it was originally. So the point is, a project plan in mind mapping form can be a really good way of structuring and breaking down a complex project with many different areas and activities, but hopefully keeping it very easy to manage by just zooming in on the topics and the information that you need and using those notes and hyperlinks and attachments to just pull together the essential information into the mind map when you need it. So project planning mind map there, nice and easy to adapt and use for your own purposes. So creative brainstorming, projects and planning, and then another big area that we see a lot of interest in and something that we help clients with all the time is strategic thinking. Now, there are many different frameworks for doing strategic thinking, like a SWOT analysis or 5 forces or any of these things. But again, a very simple template can take you a long way. So here's a pestle analysis template. And again, all we would be doing here in a working context is just brainstorming our ideas for what are the political, economic, social, technical, legal, and environmental factors that might be impacting on our organization. So, for example, if I'm looking at this from the perspective of Biggerplate as a UK business, I think we could be saying that our political uh, we've sort of got real sort of turmoil, if you like, in our UK leadership. So we might say actually there's leadership, there's uncertainty. And this is where, again, as you start to brainstorm, you might say actually uncertainty is the biggest issue. So I'm going to move that to be the higher level heading under political. And then I'm going to move that and these other items under there. So we just start to organize and categorize our information a little bit differently. So again, if we're thinking about the economic impacts related, we might be looking at sort of currency. So for example, the pound falling against the dollar, that's something our business has to think about. And again, this is where we probably would use something like that connection line to draw a very strong connection here between the ridiculous performance of the UK leadership recently and the currency impacts that has had on us. Our UK leaders managed to wipe a lot of value off the UK currency with some pretty predictably silly maneuvers. So we have to kind of just try and factor that in. So you see how we can use these connections to just draw these links between items and really make things nice and clear for us. But the idea here is to just pull our ideas and our information into the mind map and just start to brainstorm what might be happening in any of these headings that might help us. So things like discretionary purchasing might fall, things like this. We're just going to use simple mind map templates that can take us a long way. And again, I'm only using 1 or 2 or 3 keywords at a time, and I'm only going to use those core features of the MindMeister software. But by the time I've finished doing a pestle analysis in MindMeister, I'm going to have a really comprehensive view of my strategic position. And if I want to, I can zoom in on any of those details and expand forever, really, in the MindMeister map as much detail as I want, or use the notes, hyperlinks, and attachments to add that depth and detail rather than building out too much in the surface level of the mind map. So that's a few examples of MindMeister perhaps in a working context. What about those of us who are perhaps studying in some form, perhaps on the side of work or as our full-time focus? So there's sort of 3 areas that I like to talk about really for studying, for students. When I started Biggerplate, I was a student at university. So mind mapping really led me down what's become my entire adult life of working because I think mind mapping software like MindMeister is an absolute must-have for students. And if students are not aware of mind mapping software, they really should be, because it's so powerful and a lot of them just don't know about it yet. It's not for everyone, but for a lot of people, it makes a big difference. So the first area I see it making a big difference is note taking. Now you can note take in mind maps and pull a lot of information into a more structured format than if you just write linear notes, for example, in a Microsoft Word document, or even if you're writing handwritten notes on a piece of paper. What we want to try and do is get to some structured information rather than just a linear long list of notes and ideas where it's hard to see how things connect to each other. So as an example, here's a mind map that somebody created as they were listening to a lecture or a lesson about England, so my home country. So if I was telling you about England, you've got sort of a top level map here, which is your notes, and you've categorized the information into maybe some of the places that I talk about, and maybe London is maybe the sort of top priority, so you give that a number 1 because it's the capital city, or you want to sort of make that visually stand out as maybe the most important city at this point. And again, we just start to capture some notes. What do people say about what is it famous for? So this can just be very quickly captured in a MindMeister map. But if this was captured in linear notes, you're not necessarily going to see these connections and organize that information quite so coherently. We then might start to go into things like the history of England. We might talk about kings and queens, wars, explorers, and this is where categorization is really going to be helpful. Now, if you're listening to this discussion about the English history and it's jumping between all of these things, you're not going to get things in a nice sequence all the time. But if you're capturing your notes in a mind map, it's very easy to add some things into this section and then quickly jump down into this section. And then if you need to, jump back to this section. Now, in this section, again, here we're starting to use some of that other MindMeister functionality. We've started to pull in some of those images of the people that we're talking about. Here's one of England's most famous kings, Henry VIII. Why is he famous? Well, he's famous because he had 6 wives. He also had a pretty profound impact on English life, English history, because his 6 wives and his relationship with what he wanted to do meant he broke England away from Roman Catholicism. So, we can capture whatever depth and detail we need here in the mind map, but you'll see we're starting to leverage these images, we're starting to leverage links, icons, all in one note-taking mind map. So note-taking is a great use for mind mapping software, and it's a really powerful way of making your notes a little bit more coherent. Once you've captured good notes, it's much, much easier to then create subject summary mind maps. So if we go back to our Henry VIII as a topic, we might have captured some quick notes in our England mind map, but actually what we're going to do now is go to a more detailed mind map specifically about that figure in history, in this case, Henry VIII. And this is where if you've captured good notes in a mind map, you can almost copy and paste branches from your note-taking mind map into something more coherent and tidier. So here's where we're starting to break out information about this character into some more specific areas. So we've got key dates are up here. We've got a little bit about his character. Now, again, we might start to use some of those icons in MindMeister to maybe just illustrate these headings a little bit more. So what kind of character did he have? Okay, let's just add in some things here. What kind of personality might he be? Down here, we've got the famous 6 wives, and we've also then started to add what sadly happens to each of them in this slightly grim period of history when it was possible to do all of these things. So we're just capturing and categorizing information constantly, but importantly here, what we're looking for is a really tidy summary. So our note-taking mind map sometimes will have a bit of information in it that actually isn't that important, but we capture it because we're note-taking. But your subject summaries are the detail level. So it's where we're going to really try and tidy up what we've captured. You'll see here we've got some references to other key people. So we've got some other individuals who are very important, and you'll see here we've got some links. So again, if I click that, that's probably going to take us maybe to a Wikipedia page or something like that. That just takes us directly to all this depth and detail, which we don't want in our mind map, but we might want to just go over there to remind ourselves. Remember, of course, we could also do this. We could copy a chunk of that text, come back to our mind map, and actually add that in as a note. So a really powerful way, again, to pull lots of depth and detail into one place. So now we've added that note, we've got that summary Wikipedia information right here in the mind map. So subject summary mind maps are very, very powerful for students, particularly when it comes around to exam time, when you maybe are trying to remember information that you learned several weeks ago. You might have created your Henry VIII summary mind map 10 weeks earlier at the beginning of the semester, and now you've got an exam coming up. This is a fantastic way to remind yourself of the key information, and your brain will do a lot of the work for you. It will fill in a lot of the blanks. It will trigger when you see these things and where these things are categorized, triggers a lot of extra things in your memory that you maybe assumed you'd forgotten. Finally, when it comes to students, mind mapping and MindMeister can really help with written assignments. So structuring your ideas and your information in a mind map is much more beneficial than jumping straight into the writing. So for example, if we carry on our theme of Henry VIII, maybe we've been set a written assignment, which is to write about the key events of his reign. So let's click through to a different mind map here. And this is a map that potentially you're going to use to structure and plan what you're going to put into your written assignment. So again, it's simpler. We've maybe got some bigger blocks of text because we're thinking about a written document, or we've started to use the notes function here to, if you can see here, we're just starting to put some of that depth and detail into notes. So our mind map is still nice and well ordered. So if we'd started off and thought, right, what do we want to say? We want to talk about Anne Boleyn. We want to talk about the break from the church. What we would start to do then is say, well, actually, this doesn't make much sense as an order of occasions. So let's introduce Henry. And then let's just think, what happened in what order? Well, first he married Catherine. So let's put that into the middle here after the introduction. That's the start point, really. So think about building your mind maps clockwise, like you're looking at a clock face. So we're going to finish around here with a conclusion and start over here with introduction. And what we want to do here is put these things in order. So he's married to Catherine, but he has an affair with Anne. So let's put Anne there. And that triggers the sequence of events where he begins his affair. He wants to divorce Catherine. The Pope won't let him. So he says, all right, we're breaking from that church. So now we've got things in the right order. We've got the structure to our mind map. And as we build that out, we're going to build more and more information. And what we can eventually do once we've built out a very comprehensive mind map is actually export this as a Word document. So we can click common file formats and say Microsoft Word. And then what we can say to do is we can just choose our options here. I'm just going to try and do this quickly. Include links, no. Icons, no. Image, no. Task, no. Yeah, comments, votes. Let's just give that a go. I've done that very quickly, so I might not have done it perfectly. So let's just see what MindMeister is going to do is just work around that mind map structure and then push all of that information into a Word document that we can hopefully see down here. I think probably that's not going to share it on the screen. Just let me change my screen sharing a second. And then you'll be able to see if I say share the whole screen. We get here. So this is what we've got. This is our Microsoft Word export from our MindMeister map. There's our first piece of information there. And then we've got this order, this well-structured information, which we ordered and organized in our mind map, thinking about that ordering that I did. First, he married Catherine. Then he had an affair. Then he wants to divorce, so he goes to the Catholic Church and breaks up with them. Then he marries Anne. So this is a very, very quick and not particularly comprehensive example of just how we can take our planning mind map, our MindMeister map, to plan and organize our ideas. And then we use Microsoft Word for what it's made for, which is writing and editing and printing. But the mind mapping software is what's going to help you create a really well structured written assignment. So use the mind map to structure and organize your ideas and information, and then export it to Word to do the final editing and printing. And that applies not just to written assignments for students, that can also apply to things like business plans or grant proposals in a working context. So that principle of organizing in the mind map and printing and editing in the Word document is a very sound principle to apply in general. So finally, let's look at some quick examples of MindMeister in use at home. There's all sorts of different areas where you might use this in your sort of family planning. Something like a vacation plan is a very popular mind map type at certain types of year in Biggerplate. So for example, we might just create a vacation planning mind map here. This one I think was created by the MindMeister team, and you'll see they've just got some ideas to talk about here. There's some vacation checklist, maybe some language learning that they want to build into their trip, and then you've got slightly more sort of practical things like what is our luggage. And this again is just like breaking down a very big to-do list into slightly more manageable mini to-do lists. You've basically got this tree structure that breaks big long lists of things to do down into more manageable categorized areas. So when you go into the travel planning and you're thinking about flights, it's a natural time to be thinking about hotels and transfers, where actually you don't right then need to be thinking about packing your toothpaste. So by breaking this big list down into categorized and organized areas, it means we can keep our focus in the right areas at the right time. So a little vacation planner there, but we can also do slightly more profound things. So something that bridges both home and work is something like career planning or life planning even. And a simple mind map can take you a long way. Simple prompts can make you think and write into the mind map ideas that will help you. So for example, around a career plan, you might start with a mind map like this that says, well, what am I passionate about? What are my core values? What are my career goals? Then you might start to evaluate your current role, your company. What are the positives? Maybe it's in a great location. Maybe the negatives are maybe more hybrid work these days. Maybe your great office was working well for you and not anymore. Maybe the positives of your role. Maybe work with clients. Maybe negatives are lacking support, perhaps. So you can just brainstorm in this map about all sorts of things, and of course add any main branches in that you want. But the idea here is to just capture your thinking, and as you capture your thinking, you'll start to move things, you'll start to categorize and reorganize the map, and by the time you're done, you'll find you've got a really much more coherent overview of this situation than really any other kind of document. So career mapping and life planning is a very powerful use for mind mapping in the home context. And that can often lead quite seamlessly into what a lot of people use mind map for, which is a bit of personal organization. So this is an example where somebody's creating a mind map to just help them keep track of the essential information across their work, across their home. So again, you'll see here we've got these icons, we've got things around our customers, we've got them prioritized, we've got multiple projects going on with every customer, and you'll see we're just pulling a lot of information into the MindMeister maps here, including attachments and all these sort of things. But importantly, we're hiding all of that information when we don't need it. So if for the moment we want to be focused over in the personal section, maybe there's something on the family section, we're not getting crowded out by all of that work stuff, but we're pulling everything into this almost dashboard view of here's all the things that are currently going on in my life that I just need to keep track of. So personal organization with MindMeister is a very powerful use. And you'll find there's actually a course on Biggerplate showing you how to build your own personal organizer mind map. And that's part of our pro member content. So that pretty much wraps things up for me at the moment. Hopefully you've been able to follow along and it's not been too fast. So quick conclusion, if you haven't already, please do come and join us at biggerplate.com. You'll be joining about 250,000 mind mappers from around the world to access mind maps and share mind maps. So it's a real community of practice. If there are any questions or comments coming in, quite often we've got quiet groups. So let's just see what we've got here. So thank you guys for the questions. That's really great. Can you add freeform text notes pointers from outside of the mind map? Andy, I'm not sure I totally understand your question, but I'll show you something in case it's relevant. So if perhaps we wanted to add something out of the mind map structure, if maybe that's what you mean, what we can do here is say add a floating topic, and this way we might have some sort of key overview information. But I don't know whether this is answering your question, Andy, but it's just keeping it outside of the mind map structure. So sometimes on Biggerplate, you'll find there are mind maps that have the very typical mind map structure like this, but then they sometimes will have a floating topic up here that sort of gives you an overview of the mind map itself. So then somebody might use that notes feature to say, this is my presentation mind map from 2nd November 2022. So you can put text information outside of the mind map structure, but I'm not 100% sure if that's what you mean in your question, Andy. If I haven't answered that particularly well or usefully, please feel free to just email me and I can try and be a little bit more useful. Mikola says, can a user add several links in one item? Let's have a quick look and see, Mikola. So let's say we've got 2 or 3 items that we want to multiple links on one topic. So let's say, for example, we wanted to link to the Biggerplate website. So here it is, biggerplate.com. Let's add that first and foremost using this option over here and say, let's attach that and paste that link and say add. So now let's try and see, can we add maybe our career mapping link to the same topic? So this is hopefully going to avoid us having to have so many things. And here we go. We can say add another one, add that. You see, that seems to have replaced it, which is not actually what I was expecting there. I thought we could add more than one link. Let me just check I've done that right. Let's say add an attachment. Okay, so maybe what it is we can add one link to a topic, but perhaps we can add multiple things. Okay, so here we go, Mikola. We're learning by doing. So it seems you can add just one link, but you can then also add an attachment. Maybe let's just see what happens if we try and attach another thing. Can we attach? Okay, so here we're getting some interesting. So you can attach a lot into one topic, but it seems like you can only attach one URL. So let me just check one last time if that's correct. Let's just get a different URL here from Biggerplate and just see if we try to attach a second website link here, is that going to allow us or is it going to replace it? Okay, so I think what's happening there is we can only attach one URL, but as you'll see here, we've attached multiple attachments, documents. So a little bit of a compromise there, but hopefully, Mikola, that answers your question. And that's useful learning for me as well, because I haven't actually checked that for a while. Any other questions coming in? Andy has asked here, how would you compare MindMeister to other software, Mind Manager, Xmind, etc.? A great question, Andy. Off the top of my head, it's always going to depend. Whenever people ask us what's the best software, we always have to say to them, well, what do you want to do with it? So if, for example, I take the software you've put on the screen there, MindManager, XMind, and MindMeister, all three have real strengths in slightly different areas. So, for example, MindManager is probably one of the most powerful mind mapping software tools out there. It's got a huge range of project management functions, task management, and it can really handle big maps, and that's why it's quite a popular choice with sort of big project management teams and an enterprise context. So that's probably a strength of MindManager, but it's not quite so established as an online tool, for example. They're much better now over the last 2 years, but it's more sort of traditionally known as an installed Windows tool on your computer. So MindManager, very strong, powerful. A lot more functionality than MindMeister, but not quite so sort of easy to use, and I think quite a bit more expensive as well, I think. XMind is a great tool. We recommend XMind a lot to people. Again, it's simple, it's easy to get started, and it's not overwhelming. It's well priced as well, and there's a free version, so that's appealing to quite a lot of people. Again, they don't have the same level of kind of cross-functional, collaborative mind mapping that MindMeister does. So it's trying to sort of answer you on the fly there, Andy, hopefully slightly useful. But if you want to follow that up again, please do get in touch. But the real main thing is to be clear on what matters to you and your uses. So for some people, MindManager is a much better choice than MindMeister. For other people, MindMeister is a much better choice than XMind or any other software. So you've really got to get clear on what's your criteria for choosing mind mapping software, because they all maybe look quite similar. The names are quite similar, but actually they do have their differences. And whether it's, for example, being able to use it across every platform, having a good mobile application, that's very important to some people. So, for example, if you're a big user of iPads, MindManager is not a good choice for you. They don't have a good native iPad app, for example. So just get clear on kind of what are your criteria for choosing, and that way you can kind of hopefully make a good choice for yourself. And we help a lot of people to figure out which software is most suitable for them to try. We very rarely will say to people that's the right software for you, but we'll quite often be able to help people by giving them 2 or 3 that seem to be most relevant. I've got a quick follow-up question. So Andy's question here, follow-up says, does Biggerplate have other MindMeister templates? Yeah, absolutely, Andy. So if you go to biggerplate.com, quick example. Actually, that's a stupid way of doing it now. Let's go here. Just have a look at the whole map library. And what you can actually do is filter by saying software. Let's just see the MindMeister maps, apply that. And what it's going to do is just give us a list of MindMeister maps. So these are all MindMeister maps that have been shared publicly on Biggerplate. And what that means is if you're logged in as a Biggerplate user, if you find a mind map that you like, for example, here's a business plan template. If you're logged in, you could then say, download that. In reality, because it's an online file, you don't download it. It'll just open it up in MindMeister for you. So you've got lots of options to just open up ready-made templates in your MindMeister account, and then get rid of the bits you don't want, add the bits you need. So yeah, your understanding of Biggerplate is absolutely right, Andy. It's a great question. A lot of people don't quite understand the connection between the two, but yes, your understanding is absolutely right. We've got lots of MindMeister templates on Biggerplate that you can then open up in your MindMeister account. I've got a question here. Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know the answer to that. Can I save a map in JSON format? My initial thought, Mikola, is no. But I don't think you'll have the option to. Got export options here, so we've got Word, PowerPoint, image, mind map formats. Yeah, so I don't think a JSON saving is possible, Mikola. But I'm pretty confident I'm right on that, but yeah, you might need to contact the MindMeister folks directly to just ask them if they've got any more detail on that. There might be some integration or some workaround that I'm not aware of, so maybe contact the folks at MindMeister and see. And he's saying, sorry, can't see your screen. Oh, that's probably because I went to the wrong screen share, perhaps. So just to go back to Andy's question about MindMeister maps on Biggerplate. Sorry, Andy, I was sharing the wrong screen. Classic. So here we go. If we go Biggerplate and we say, let's have a look at all the mind maps, we end up on this page. And then what we can do on this right-hand side, which is what I was just trying to show you, but you couldn't see it, is to say, filter all of these mind maps by format. And that's where we can say to deselect and just choose MindMeister. And that's going to show us just the MindMeister maps that have been shared on Biggerplate. And then you can open them in your MindMeister account if you're logged in on Biggerplate. It's also worth mentioning, though, Andy, and for anybody else as well, don't forget that MindMeister can import some of these other formats. So if, for example, we find a Mind Manager map, so a map that's been created using, Mind Manager, so maybe this one here, it's actually possible if you download this file onto your computer, you can actually then import that into MindMeister. So I won't try and do that right now because I think that would probably make my connection fall over. But if you go into your MindMeister account, you can say, click this big blue button here, and you'll see there's an option here to say import. And that will actually allow you to import Mind Manager files, Xmind files, and FreeMind. So those are three of the most kind of popular mind mapping formats as alternatives to MindMeister. So even if you find a map on Biggerplate that you like but is not in MindMeister format, you may find actually you can download it and import it into your MindMeister account and use it anyway. So I hope that's just a useful pointer for you there, Andy. So coming up to the end of our time together, but thank you all very, very much for your questions. It's great to actually have some questions and comments coming in. Sometimes I do these presentations and I just seem to be talking into the darkness. So that's a really useful option. I see a question there from Andy just to finish that says, I noticed MindMeister has a project planning module. Opinion on it, I don't actually have an opinion, Andy. I'm not entirely sure whether you mean a function in the software or a module in their training areas. But again, if you want to follow up with me, I'll just put my contact details back on the screen to finish up with, and I'd be delighted to hear from any of you with any of your follow-up questions, or if something I've said is turns out to be incorrect or useless, please feel free to reach out to me. There's my email account on the screen there, and I'll be very, very happy to hear from you. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our time together. So I'll say thank you all very, very much for joining me. If you're new to MindMeister, I hope you really enjoy experimenting with the software. It's a fantastic tool and a fantastic company. So I really strongly advocate for giving it a really nice go and experimenting and playing around with it. And as always, if you need any help to go further with your mind mapping, please do get in touch with us and we will be very, very happy to help you in any way we can. Wishing you all very, very best for the remainder of your day. And thank you very much for joining us again.